is Series 3 of Away, a podcast for anyone exploring 12-step sobriety. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. Hello, everybody. This is Steph. Series 3, Episode 5. Step 4 in the 12 and 12. And I thought I'd get started or do it now or maybe even upload it early because I'm just not doing anything, so why not get a head start? That's an attitude I'd never have had when I was drinking. Is anything going on? I have my psychiatrist tomorrow. You know, I take Zoloft now, and I switched that. I asked to switch it and tried it after taking Lexapro because it deals with, supposedly PTSD and obsessive compulsive disorder. And I thought that my binging was part of obsessive compulsive thinking, right? Obsessive behavior, obsessive thinking about the food, compulsive behavior of eating it. And honestly, it seems actually like it was more of a sugar addiction. Once I cut the sugar out, the binging has stopped. I still will have a late night snack sometimes, but it's just not the same obsessive thinking and compulsive behavior. And in recent weeks, maybe months, I've noticed some of the physical symptoms of anxiety returning. For me, it often manifests in dyspepsia, nausea, headaches, some cramps. It's very weird because I think it's almost like I'm out of touch with it, that it registers physically before it registers emotionally. But yeah, I just haven't felt as good lately. And now that I feel like the food problem is kind of taken care of in another way, I think the Lexapro was better for me. I don't know. Anyway, I'm thinking of talking to him about that tomorrow, seeing if he's willing to put me back. He's pretty open-minded and cool, and, I do my research. My goddaughter gave me a hard time for saying research, which I think I say usually, so I'm working on saying research. Yeah, so there's that. I just walked my dog, which on weekend nights when there's fireworks is not actually a walk. It's carrying her to a place where she'll pee and then racing home. And it's a lot warmer out than I thought. So I'm a little out of breath. And I'm a weightlifter. That's my primary workout. That's how I stay fit. I like it better than any other exercise. And I did a heavy leg day today, like a bodybuilding leg day, which is also exhausting. Anyway, lots of uninteresting things. So we're going to start step 4, or maybe even finish it in this episode. Step 4, short form, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Moral. What does it mean here and now? I think, I've got cat hair all over me. I think moral is subjective to a degree, right? Really, what we're doing here is, checking in with our sense of good and bad. You know, you may have a religion that dictates that to you. You may not. So, what might you feel guilty or ashamed of, or angry with yourself, or sad about? Because I think we naturally have empathy, sympathy, compassion, I think we can find that. Okay, so let's read. Creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Evolution did too. Without them, we wouldn't be a complete human being. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated by humans. If there were no social instinct, if men cared nothing for society of one another, there would be no society. So these desires for the sex relation, for material and emotional security, for companionship, are perfectly necessary and right. And if you believe, surely God-given, but you can cut that off, that last part of the sentence off. Bill, throughout this chapter and step 4 in the big book, he makes a big deal about sex relation and material and emotional security, more material. Now, remember, it's a time Bill was a philanderer. Bill, well into sobriety, when he was writing this book, in fact, was cheating on Lois. Sex was maybe a problem for him, maybe an addiction. Certainly we see that he struggles with that quote-unquote defect, with that bad behavior, because he makes reference to how to work on it all the time. It's like a very super focus. That and material success, financial success. So in some ways, you know, he's working out his own demons when he's writing this stuff. But that doesn't mean these are the areas that you have to examine necessarily. They might be a good starting point, a good practice point, but these are not necessarily the areas with which everyone struggles. Reading. Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerfully, blindly, many times subtly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. When thus out of joint, man's natural desires cause him great trouble. Practically all the trouble there is. No human being, however good, is exempt from these troubles. Nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instinct. Okay, first, of course, I don't always think that this is natural desires. And I don't think, for the most part, it's misdirected instinct. I mean, you know that by now. And I think like heroin can addict anybody. You don't have to have the addict gene. Now, if you're someone who's trying it, you know, other things speak to you being an addict, probably. If you get that far in your drug use, seems like, you know, one of the last things one would try. But if a kid is prescribed an opiate for pain relief after an injury, he can become addicted to the opiate rapidly. And when he runs out of money, can turn to heroin, which is the closest replication of the high. It's better, and cheaper. But regardless, an opiate's the same thing, right? Heroin is opium. So it doesn't seem like misdirected instinct is true for all people. Or maybe I just don't like the phrasing. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what they're saying. All right, let's keep reading. Step 4 is our vigorous and painstaking effort to discover what these liabilities in each of us have been. I think liabilities is actually a great word here. We want to find exactly how, when, and where our natural desires have warped us. We wish to look squarely at the unhappiness this has caused others and ourselves. Yes, we do. But I would say, rather than natural desires, seems like he's making excuses. Anyway, I would say we want to find exactly how, when, and where our alcoholism caused us to behave badly, our addiction. By discovering what our emotional deformities are, let's just replace deformities, or emotional problems, issues, whatever you want to say, we can move toward their correction. Without a willing and persistent effort to do this, there can be little sobriety or contentment for us. I would say that's true for all change. Without a searching and fearless moral inventory, most of us has found that the faith which really works in daily living is still out of reach. It helps that I'm going to take out the word fearless, because that's, especially if you're doing this in your first year, that's hard. So a searching inventory, trying your best to take a look at the things that maybe you're still holding on to, that you don't need to. It helps. It helps with any change. Before tackling the inventory problem in detail, let's have a closer look at what the basic problem is. I can't, because this is all about the sex desire, blah, blah, blah. That could be your thing. That could be your primary misbehavior, whatever. But the next one is the quest for security, always expressed in terms of money. I just want to say that I think this book is actually a little bit confusing. So is the big book on step 4, because it almost feels like it's talking about step 8. And it's not the same thing. Because in this step, in step 4, we're looking for things we do or feel ashamed about. But unlike in step 8, we're looking through the lens of maybe anger or resentment or sadness. So it's not the same as step 8. I'll explain more. Okay, they say, whenever a human being becomes a battleground for the instincts, there can be no peace. If you're new, your instinct about booze as a solution should be your focus now, right? So the only instinct we really need to change in the beginning is the instinct. But this is a learned instinct in big part, because maybe we picked up booze and we found that it was a solution to some of our emotional disturbance. And so we kept using it for that. So now we've sort of almost evolved into an instinct for booze as a solution. So really in the beginning, and maybe, forever as it applies to your alcoholism, what we're trying to change is that instinct that booze is a solution, right? It isn't. The instinct needs to change or diminish, and a new instinct needs to develop. Skipping down. Alcoholics, especially, should be able to see that instinct run wild in themselves is the underlying cause of their destructive drinking. We have drunk to drown feelings of fear, frustration, and depression. We have drunk to escape the guilt of passions, and then have drunk again to make more passions possible. We have drunk for the vainglory, that we might the more enjoy foolish dreams of pomp and power. This perverse soul sickness is not pleasant to look upon. Instincts on rampage balk at investigation. Okay, so this is an overly wrong way of sort of talking about the vicious cycle. You drink to quell an emotional disturbance. You behave badly. You promise to quit. You drink again to make the feelings of shame, guilt, and remorse abate. Vicious cycle. Perverse soul sickness, I don't think that's true. I think now we know that it's not a perverse soul sickness. We know more about sort of what people call the lizard or the animal brain. And when you give your brain something it really likes, like donuts, right? Like anything that's overwhelmingly good to it, it wants more. Every brain. It wants more. And the lizard brain, the animal brain, the root of it, that pushes you, come on, have more, give me more. And then my opinion is the personal responsibility of that is like, I can choose to feed it or starve it. I don't know if that sounds good or right. It sounds kind of harsh. I don't mean it to be harsh, but like, if you starve it, it literally diminishes. That wiring diminishes. Your brain stops giving power to something when it realizes, when it understands it's not going to get it anymore. So what feels hard in the beginning, the abstinence, the starvation, the whatever, literally gets easier. Literally, because your brain is going to stop asking at some point, or asking as intensely. I feel like I didn't word that. Okay, if temperamentally we are on the depressive side, we are apt to be swamped with guilt and self-loathing. We wallow in this messy bog, often getting a misshapen and painful pleasure out of it. As we morbidly pursue this melancholy activity, we may sink to such a point of despair that nothing but oblivion looks possible as a solution. Here, of course, we have lost all perspective and therefore all genuine humility. For this is pride in reverse, which is not a moral inventory at all. It is the very process by which the depressive has so often been led to the bottle and extinction. And that's very much Bill's story. This is sort of directed at the why me crowd. This isn't fair, why me? That's just not everybody. Pride in reverse is it's just again saying that the why me and self-pity, if this is your story, if if this is what drives you, is just as self-centered as egotistical self-centeredness, prideful self-centeredness. If, however, our natural disposition is inclined to self-righteousness or grandiosity, our reaction will be just the opposite. We will be offended at AA's suggested inventory. We shall claim that our serious character defects, if we think we have any at all, have been caused chiefly by excessive drinking. So, I think in a lot of our cases they have. For some people, sure, they haven't. But, I think drinking, the disinhibitor, alcohol, allowed us to be more comfortable with bad behavior. So we lost the connection to our moral compass, which, whether or not you were raised with manners and raised with all that, I do think we know inherently in our hearts and our souls and our minds, or whatever you want to say, we know right from wrong. I think all animals experience some degree of that. I'm not assigning them the exact same emotions as humans, but you certainly see it in other mammals. Okay, we will leave it there for now. My husband got home early, so I have to bring this episode to a close a little bit early. We'll finish off step 4 in the 12 and 12 in the next episode. And as always, I hope this helped someone somewhere. I hope you know there is a way.